Okay, everyone. We are about to begin this evening's webinar brought to you by Three Wells and Papa and Barkley. We'll give one more minute for stragglers, and then we'll dive right in together. And as a reminder, this evening's webinar is all about using CBD and cannabis to help cope with anxiety, especially in consideration of everything that's going on in the world today. So one more minute and we'll get started. All right. Okay, we've given our 1 minute grace period, so let's all get going and dive into the festivities for this evening. So once again, this is Papa Barkley and Three Wells bringing you this evening's edutainment, education and entertainment, all focused on CBD and cannabis to help cope with anxiety. Tonight, and the voice at the other end of the Zoom call, this is me, Jason Turner. I'll be your MC for this evening. I am the CMO and co-founder of Three Wells, and I'll be fielding questions and helping us flow through tonight's discussion and information. So once again, tonight is brought to you by Three Wells and Papa and Barkley. So you're getting two great sides of education and products and all kinds of things to consider as you look for help and products to help you cope with the worry, the stress, and the anxiety that I think a lot of us are feeling right now under what's going on in the world. So hopefully we can bring a little relief and happiness and joy to your life. And that's what it's all about tonight, to help you do that. So for those of you that don't know Three Wells, we are the only CBD and cannabis focused website designed for adults 40 and over. We have a wealth of information and information from conditions to products to what's going on in the world of cannabis and CBD. And it's all focused around bringing joy and health and wellness to everyone that we possibly can around the world. And for those of you that don't know our co-sponsor for tonight, Papa and Barkley, Papa and Barkley is a fantastic products company. And at Three Wells, we're very careful about who we have on our site and who we work with. And so Papa and Barkley is one of those great companies that we've chosen to work with, and they've chosen to work with us. And the whole company started was actually an interesting story about a son's mission to help his elderly father, who was going through an immense amount of pain, created this wonderful balm, and that was the catalyst to starting Papa and Barkley. And the balm was so effective and so welcomed by not only his father, but also everyone that they shared it with, that they built a company around it. And the company is really interesting. Three Wells has gotten to know Papa and Barkley much, much more over the last year. And they have some award-winning products that we at Three Wells use ourselves, and that's why we confidently recommend their products. And they are right now a collective of fantastic scientists and caregivers and advocates, all centered in their energies around delivering great, trusted products to everyone they possibly can. And as it says here on the screen, their products are 100% solvent-free. So take a look deeper beyond this webinar at their products, and I'm sure you'll find something that can help you in a variety of ways beyond the anxiety, worry, and stress that we're going to talk about tonight. So a couple of logistics for this evening. We're going to be about 45 minutes in going through the whole content and recommendations and specifics, and then we'll move into some Q&A. We'll spend about 10 minutes of Q&A, and if you have any questions, you can open a chat window and submit a question there, and I will facilitate that Q&A session. To replay this webinar, give us about 2 or 3 days, and we'll have it posted up on threewells.co. You'll find it on our homepage, a link to this webinar in case you want to replay it. And of course, it will be on our YouTube site. And just as a reminder, everyone tonight, Three Wells and Papa and Barkley, we're not doctors. We're not your doctor. We're here to do our best to give you guidance and help. But if you're taking anything, whether it's for anxiety or anything else, we strongly encourage you to check with your doctor and make sure that what you take from cannabis, CBD, THC, etc., doesn't conflict or cause you any undue harm with medications that you're already taking. And just generally, it's a good idea to check in with your physician. So we're not doctors. We do our best to give you great information that you can trust and move forward with, but do that. It's just generally good practice. All right, so this evening we are very fortunate to have two fantastic experts with us. And for those of you that have been on any of our previous webinars, you'll recognize Dr. Deborah Malka is an MD and PhD, and she is also our Chief Medical Advisor here at Three Wells. And we have an extra special guest tonight, Boris Sharansky from Papa and Barkley, who is their product expert and Chief Operating Officer, so a man of many talents and wears many hats. Just quickly on Dr. Debbie, so you know her background, which is pretty phenomenal. She has a MD, PhD in physicians. She specializes in cannabis consultations. She's got a PhD in human genetics from Columbia, degrees from the University of New Mexico School of Medicine and Santa Fe College of Natural Medicine. She's a clinician and an educator, and she worked as a medical director for Medican Inc., providing medical marijuana evaluations in California, and they saw over 300,000 patients. So you can imagine the experience and hands-on, front lines experience Dr. Debbie has. And she's also accredited in clinical cannabinoid medicine sponsored by the Society of Cannabis Clinicians. And our special guest, Boris, he is, like I said, the CEO or Chief Operating Officer of Papa and Barkley. He's responsible for all the cannabis sourcing, and he's going to share some really important and interesting stuff about cannabis sourcing because it matters what goes into the products. And he's the person on the front lines making sure only the best stuff gets into their products. He's dedicated his adult life to, best-in-class quality and effectiveness of natural products, not just cannabis, but that's his focus. He is a board member of the Cannabis Distribution Association and a founding member of the California Hemp Council. He also founded the Iowa Hemp Association and Heartland Hemp Company in Iowa. And so, he's helped families source quality CBD for their children with epilepsy. So just a fantastic set of experiences, and he's bringing all that to us tonight. So I can't wait to hear all of Boris's stories and what he's going to share with us. So tonight, what you're going to get out of this evening, what we're dedicating our time to are three big things. Now, there's a lot of detail in behind each one of these, but at the highest level tonight, you're going to find out specifically what is in cannabis and CBD that helps with worry and anxiety. We got to get specific, and you're going to leave tonight highly educated in a practical way all about that. And how to choose what to take. It matters. What you take matters, not only what's in the product, but the quality of the product, how much and when you take it. And then that naturally flows into what I just said, how much and when to use it, because that all matters. So we will get into dosing. Dosing is incredibly important in all of this. So let's start diving in. The first section we're going to cover, as promised, is what in CBD and cannabis helps with anxiety. And at this point, I'm going to ask Dr. Debbie to step in, and she's going to give us a great rundown of what's inside of CBD and cannabis that helps. So I'll turn it to you, Debbie.
Hi, folks. So many of our webinars start with the two main cannabinoids in cannabis that I'm going to remind you about. That's CBD and THC. In particular, we're also going to talk about the interaction of the main components in cannabis, CBD, THC, and the terpenes, which produces an entourage effect. So we're going to do these one at a time, but the combination is what's really important, especially for mood disorders such as anxiety. And so we will start talking about CBD. So CBD is short for cannabidiol. And one of the great important effects of CBD is that it actually calms you down. In medical language, that's known as anti-anxiety or antipsychotic. It is relaxing. So CBD alone, pure CBD, is really good for anxiety. CBD in cannabis has other things that are important for anxiety. But before we go on to the other things, we want to know, is there any value of THC in treating anxiety? And I would like to address that. So what can THC do for us? So THC is short for tetrahydrocannabinol. And in general, you have to be careful with THC when you're treating anxiety because it is a stimulant. Unfortunately, or fortunately, many people who have anxiety also are co-diagnosed with depression. And that's one area where THC comes in, is that if you know what your mood disorder is, you need to consider THC if you also want to have an uplifting effect in addition to a relaxing effect. There's another type of anxiety, which we'll get to a little bit later, that THC comes in helpful for. But the important thing is, in general, you don't want to have more than about 35% maximum of THC in your anti-anxiety mix. So 2/3 CBD, 1/3 THC, or a lot of combinations which have less THC, but not more than about 1/3 THC, because then it's too stimulating and it can actually induce, in some people, a little bit of paranoia. So THC is okay as long as it's not in the majority. And then there are some important terpenes that are relevant for anxiety. And the terpenes are the part of the plant that give the plant not only its unique smell, but it's really important, the terpenes in mood disorders. Because terpenes are what's going to determine whether your THC content is going to be too stimulating or whether it can be relaxing. For example, there's a special terpene called linalool, which smells like lavender, which is very relaxing. So if you have a strain that has a lot of linalool in it, or where linalool is a major terpene, you're going to be relaxed even though there's THC there. As another example, there's another terpene called myrcene. That's very sedating. So if you have a strain that has CBD or THC or both, with a lot of myrcene, that's going to help you sleep. So some people with anxiety have sleep disorders. They're going to look for linalool and myrcene in their strain. And as a last example, even though it's not here, there's another terpene called alpha-pinene, which is stimulating. And you're going to want to avoid that with anxiety. There is a really good strain that is very famous for treating anxiety. It's called Cannatonic. And based on what I just told you, it has the perfect mix. It has 2 times CBD, or about 2/3 CBD and 1/3 THC, or a 2-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC. And its dominant terpene is linalool. So this is a perfect strain for anxiety. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to find these days, but back when CBD was coming onto the market, like 5-10 years ago, Cannatonic was one of the first CBD-rich strains that were available. So it's got the THC to kind of uplift your mood, it's got the CBD to relax your mood, and it has the linalool to make you really relaxed. So that's a strain you're going to want to look for if you're looking for strains.
Quick question. This is a whole flower or a product. This isn't an ingredient, or is it also an ingredient in, say, a tincture or something like that?
The answer is yes to both, but unfortunately, most tinctures don't list the strain name that they came from. So the flowers, the full flower, you can still identify by its strain name because that's how it's sold. In the early days when they were making CBD-rich strains, Cannatonic was sure to be in some tincture that was available because that was one of 2 main strains that were available that were CBD-rich. But now there's hundreds, if not thousands, Boris would know this better, of CBD-rich strains. So it's not really listed on many products what the name of the strain is in the tincture or in the capsule. So you might have to look for a flower.
Strain-specific tinctures are definitely going to be coming in the future. That is the future of cannabis products. Unfortunately, right now, especially on, I think you would actually on the CBD side, the hemp CBD only products are products that are under 0.3% THC. On that side, you probably would get more uniformity, especially with our products. We use just a couple of different strains that we've found out in Oregon, cultivars of hemp. But in general, a lot of these strains, will pass by the wayside. My number one recommendation is the focus should be the CBD to THC ratio, in addition to, and just as important, is the actual dominant terpenes. So Cannatonic, the reason it was so great is because it was a 2-to-1 or sometimes 3-to-1 CBD to THC strain. And the terpene, the linalool terpene, was very calming and also great for inflammation. So the high CBD would help with inflammation, anxiety, those types of things. And the linalool itself would do that as well. So if you're looking for things, look for those terpenes and look for the specific ratios of cannabinoids if you can't find a specific strain.
I'm really happy to hear that tinctures may be containing strain specificity in the future. That'll be a great addition.
Carlos sent in a question: what is strain in 1 to 3 THC dominant and the 30-to-1 CBD rich? So I think he's asking if there are specific strains related to the ratios of CBD to THC in a product. And the core of the question is around the strain. And I'm assuming that a ratio and a strain are very different things. So if you could explain that.
Yeah, that's correct. The ratio really refers to the cannabinoids themselves. Because Papa and Barkley realized as we scaled that creating strain-specific tinctures immediately in the market, the way the market was in terms of sourcing, would be very challenging. We are working on that right now, actually, to release a different line of tinctures that are strain-specific. But our traditional ratio tinctures are exactly that. We would find the right ratios of cannabinoids. And so what we would be doing is infusing high THC strains of cannabis in addition to high CBD strains. The ones we use are like Harlequin. We've used Ringo's Gift before. We've used things called like Strawberry Godfather to get our CBD infusions. And we use a variety of strains on the THC-rich side. And then we actually blend to achieve our ratios. So that's the specific way we do it. We found that sticking to a specific ratio for certain ailments is the way that we actually sell cannabis, because we believe that that's the way the cannabis actually works for you. Selling any specific product for a specific ailment is a little bit more difficult because cannabis is such a personalized therapeutic substance.
Thank you, Boris. Debbie, back to you. I think we were talking about next the Entourage Effect.
So this is a really important concept that not many people know about, but it turns out to be so important. I'm going to just spend a little bit of time on that. The natural plant, the cannabis plant, has like over 400 chemicals in it. So we've just focused on 2 cannabinoids and 3 or 4 terpenes. But the way the plant grows in nature, it actually turns out that all these chemicals act together to help produce a therapeutic effect. So if you had pure CBD, for example, which some people may be using for anxiety, you may need to use up to 10 times the dose as you would from a cannabis extracted CBD with the full plant extract or the full spectrum extract. And that's containing the terpenes and flavonoids and, all of the components of the plant. So when these terpenes and flavonoids and cannabinoids all act together, it can give you up to 10 times the beneficial effect. It has to do with helping the chemicals get into your cells. It has to do with helping the chemicals be transported in your bloodstream. And of course, it has to do with the added effect of what the CBD is doing, for example, relaxing, plus what the linalool is doing, relaxing. So you're getting the effect that you're looking for from several sources, and it's amplified. So the entourage effect really refers to the synergy or the amplification of the effects that you're looking for from the mixed components of the full extract of the plant, which you do not get if you have pure cannabinoids, such as pure CBD or pure THC. So that's the entourage effect. I hope that makes sense.
So there's a lot inside the Entourage Effect, and I think we need to talk about this: the full spectrum, broad spectrum, and isolate. So, Boris, if you can walk us through this, so that because we're going to, I go into dispensaries and we have this discussion, and it's great if everyone on the call can be educated on exactly what that means.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. When you think from left to right here, think of the left being products with the left side are more like fresh squeezed orange juice, and as you go farther to the right or further to the right, you're getting more to like something like a Tropicana or a Sunny Delight, right? Full spectrum CBD is actually going to have all your cannabinoids, all of your terpenes that are in the original flower. Including the THC. That's very crucial. And so when we talk about whole plant, this Entourage Effect is based on a study done originally in Spain by Manuel Guzman. And what they found was that THC and CBD, although independently would decrease the size of tumors in rats, they also found that when they worked together that the tumor would decrease even more. So that led to the creation of this concept or theory of the Entourage Effect. So whenever you hear full spectrum CBD, that means you're getting a hemp CBD extract or product or whatever is in that product has the full spectrum of cannabinoids inclusive of the legal limits of THC. When you hear something like broad spectrum CBD, that's pretty much similar, but what they're doing is they're doing some post-processing. So they're adding alcohol and separation to the process, or in sometimes other chemical processes, to remove that THC. So what they do is they either somehow remove the THC by heating the extract, and that already is going to destroy terpenes and destroy the original chemical formulation of that, or they're going to go ahead and strip the original plant of its individual terpenes and cannabinoids and then mix them all back together without including that THC. Either way, you can see how rather than being just a fresh squeeze, we're getting to more breaking up the parts of the orange juice and then putting it back together, right? And then finally, when you get to isolate CBD, that's basically just like concentrating like the vitamin C only in orange juice. You cut out all the fiber, you cut out any other valuable phytonutrients, and you're just going for that, what the pharma world calls the API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient. This is what the FDA tests for. If you start going through those types of processes, they look for 1, maybe 2 maximum APIs. When you go to the left here, that's what separates sort of the nutraceutical, natural, and vitamin market, is that typically those formulations stick to whole plant and some kind of spectrum of whole plant formulations. In my opinion, and Pop and Barkley's products are all on the leftist of the left side of this, so they're farther on the left side of this, while many, many other products are on the right side. We believe in the Entourage Effect. We believe that it's better to be on the left side of this graph than the right side. But that being said, for some very specific conditions, anxiety not being one of them, it may be better to be on one or the other side of this graph. But that remains to be seen with scientific data.
So at this point, we've got a great understanding baseline of what's in the plants, what kind of things to start looking for. But let's move into this, where we really start getting into what to take and how much, because at the end of the day, I'm sure we have all kinds of curiosity about this with everyone in attendance tonight. But and Debbie was very much stressing that we have to be specific about what kind of anxiety before we start talking about what and how much to take. So everyone on the call that is suffering from any sort of anxiety, this is really going to resonate with you. So Debbie, can you start walking us into the types of anxiety so that we can get into, all right, what specific products and how much we should take for that different type of anxiety?
So I didn't get this out of a medical textbook. I got this from my practice, that there are generally 3 types of anxiety that I see in people I deal with. There's probably 10 types, but these are the 3 main ones. So the first one that I call stress related, which probably a lot of people have right now, is when your system is actually under stress. And the way that you're responding to stress is with anxiety or worry. But there's 2 components. You've got your worrying and you have your stress. Stress is actually a physiologic adaptation to, it's kind of like stimulating your fight or flight response. And that's a basic physiologic autonomic response system that THC actually can help manage because of our ever-present endocannabinoid system, which is helpful in managing stress. And THC acts directly on the endocannabinoid system. So, not to get too far ahead, but with stress, you're going to want some THC in your mix. The next one, depression related. With depression, you also want to have some euphoric advantage in your mix, which you can get from THC. You can also get it from another terpene called limonene, which smells like citrus. And then the worry related, that's where it's pretty much your typical straight on anxiety, where you're not dealing with depression, you're not dealing with stress, you're just dealing with a need to relax. And in that category, the worry category, that's where you're going to have the best results with your CBD only type of strains or products, like a 30-to-1 product, which is mostly, 97% CBD. That's going to work really well for worry. But if you're having stress or depression, you might want to use a higher ratio of THC in your product. You might even look for strains that have a little bit of that uplift in them, such as that limonene that I mentioned. So you got to know what your mood is. All anxiety is not the same.
So related to this, we had a question specific to CBD, but if you could also extend it out to THC, and that is it safe, and the question was specific to CBD again, to decrease anxiety when pregnant? Is CBD safe to take when you're pregnant?
In general, you probably should always check with your doctor before you take anything. That's the first thing I have to remind you of, especially when you're pregnant. Second of all, the amount of CBD that you take is going to be very important. Pure isolate CBD is usually taken at much higher doses than cannabis CBD, and those higher doses may actually interfere with some of your other biochemical processes. So if I had a client who was pregnant, I would steer them towards a small amount of full spectrum cannabis extracted CBD, and I would personally consider that to be safe. But everybody's different. Depends on, what other drugs you're taking, etc. But as far as the general knowledge where don't take pot when you're pregnant, they're really usually talking about THC. They're not talking about CBD when they say that. CBD has been shown to be very safe.
One of the questions we got, since we're talking specifically about CBD and THC, but we got prior to tonight, was from Irene. And anxiety affects, this is the question, anxiety affects sleep. When, what, and how much tincture will help her to sleep through the night or fall asleep? I guess she's anxious and she's full of anxiety, and it's causing her insomnia, if I extrapolate what she's saying. Any advice if you're anxious and you need sleep, what should be taken?
Yeah, well, the products that people use typically for that would be our CBD tincture, our CBD capsules. We make topical and ingestible products. If you're talking about our non-hemp CBD products on the California regulated side, I would point to the 1-to-1A. That's our 1-to-1 tincture, which is CBD to THCA, which is the non-psychoactive version of THC. It acts very much like CBD in its anti-inflammatory effect, and it also is said to have anti-anxiety effects. So our 1-to-1A has been touted as something that's very good for that. Also, our living tincture. Our living tincture is a raw infusion of a fresh cannabis flower. So we use fresh frozen material. So it's not allowed to cure. That allows it to have more bright terpenes, much fresher terpenes, and ones that would typically off-gas in the curing process, meaning they would not make it into any final formulations. We actually capture them by freezing them. So that living tincture is a fully non-decarboxylated product, which has been reported to be great for relaxation and as an anti-anxiety.
So Boris, you said non-decarboxylated. Can you just quickly define that for everyone?
Sure. So, traditionally THC, why do people smoke cannabis, for example, to get high in the old sense, right? You have to heat raw cannabis. If you were to just eat bud, you would probably not get any psychoactive effect. That's because in its raw form, cannabis, THC has an acid molecule attached to it. That's why it's called THCA. When you heat THCA, you actually lose 12% of its weight, which is that acid molecule, and it converts to what's known as delta 9 THC, and that is actually the psychoactive component of THC. As was mentioned earlier, sometimes THC in its psychoactive nature can increase anxiety, but it does also have a calming effect. THCA, the raw version, does not fully attach to your receptor cells. It acts more like CBD and kind of tickles them and also decreases your body's inflammatory response. So both those things put together will help it decrease anxiety. So that's what it means to decarboxylate. When you decarboxylate, you burn that acid molecule off, and that's called decarboxylation.
Thank you. Boris, you're on a roll. So let's talk about the next thing up here, which is around different ways to take and ingest all these things to help reduce anxiety.
Sure. Well, the right side is just regular flower. That's a vaporizer right there. I would highly, highly suggest that if you're going to ingest flower or any sort of smoke into your lungs, that you go the vaporizer route and not necessarily the joint route. You can buy fresh flower and put that into the vaporizer. Joints still do combust, and you're actually losing 75% of the cannabinoids sometimes in burning and in combustion. And you're obviously still entering carcinogens into your lungs. So I would still very much encourage people to vaporize on the left side. But even though if you are vaporizing or smoking, either way, I would encourage you to start with high CBD strains. So what that means is a CBD strain that has more than a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC. So we're talking 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1, up to 20-to-1. 30-to-1 starts to be close to a hemp product. 40-to-1 is definitely a hemp product. These are our other products, basically all of the capsules and tinctures that we talked about. The 1-to-1 is on the right side. That's our 1-to-1A, which is what I was talking about before. The one all the way on the left, the CBD, can be purchased online. And the right three products can be only purchased in California. They are very, very similar. One just comes from cannabis grown in Colorado or Vermont, and one comes from cannabis grown in California.
So I want to point out something that, another reason that we're such big fans and supporters of Papa and Barkley at Three Wells is look at that labeling. It's easy to understand. You immediately understand the ratios. You know how much is in the bottle, like 900 milligrams total cannabinoids. There's 30 milliliters, so it's easy for you to know how much to take. Boris, anything you want to add to that as far as labeling and how to read the label, or do you feel like?
Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing is on our boxes, when you buy them, you'll have a batch-specific QR code. So you can actually scan that QR code and get the certificate of analysis. We, unlike many other hemp companies out there, you can see this right here. We test against not just potency, but the next few pages of this, I don't know if they're included in the presentation or not. The next few pages of this would show that we test against 63 different pesticides, mycotoxins, microbial analyses, heavy metals, foreign materials, as well as water activity. We test against the California medical cannabis standards, which are the most stringent in the entire country. So all of our hemp CBD products and all of our California marijuana products across the board are tested under the same regimen. Unfortunately, the terpene analysis was not included on this one, and that's the one I had asked for them to send over. So a little bit of a technical area on our side, but this is just on our initial flower that comes in. You can see that our initial flower that we're working with is a 14.5% hemp flower. You can see from the picture that it is actually a bud. Many companies will use a lower potency hemp that's actually pulverized sticks, stems, leaf, and flower material. That is a cheaper bulk material, and it has almost no terpenes in it. And I'm sad that we don't have the terpene test here, but as you can see, since we use full bud that's cured correctly on our hemp CBD line, which is what we do in California as well, we actually hold ourselves to a much higher standard than I would say 99% of the hemp CBD market, from judging by our input product. So I just thought that was a very important thing to show here. And you can see that the total CBD, decarboxylated, is about 13.2%.
So what we can do, Boris, is for the replay, we can see about adding that in. I'm not sure the other COAs. I think the big picture here, the big message here is that you actually have these and you publish these, and that, I got to tell you, as someone who looks at a lot of these products, there are a lot of companies out there that don't actually do this or do this well or share it. So it's worth, I know it seems to the audience like a lot of data and numbers and whatnot, and it is. And if you want to geek out on it, this is a great source to do so. But the bigger picture here is that you actually take it to an independent lab and have it analyzed, and you make sure that the ingredients that go into the product and the final product are following through in the promise you're making, and that they're trustworthy. So no matter what product you're looking at, everyone on this webinar, we encourage you to look at these COAs or certificate of analysis, because it tells you a lot. Boris, staying with you, you guys present all of this in a really easy to understand way. So I'll turn it to you, but I love this graphic that you have.
Yeah, so we've worked very hard to look. We're a wellness company at our very core, and we create a range of cannabis products. And we would ask a lot of times, does it get you high? Does it get you high? Getting high is a term that I think we need to get away from in general. Cannabis is not, when you even smoke some THC, it's nowhere near the quote unquote high you may get from a Percocet or from a Vicodin or from an oxycodone or whatever these things that we have overprescribed to our entire nation, and have created an epidemic of high proportions and of unprecedented proportions. So when we talk about getting high, I don't like that term. Cannabis across the board, in my mind, all use is some way therapeutic. If you define a glass of wine at the end of the day as therapeutic, even though actually most studies will suggest that any that type of alcohol ingestion, especially that high concentration of sugar, it may not be good for you, then relaxing with something that is non-intoxicating, that is non-toxic, and that has no effect whatsoever on your liver, like so many other medications do, to me is still wellness. So that's just my truth that I'd like to speak before I start. But when we look at this, we really look at ratios of CBD to THC. And, you go to the very left side, CBD dominant, that's our 30-to-1, that's our CBD products, that's everything that has just under that 0.3% THC, right? Then when we start creeping into CBD rich, some of those products like that CBD relief patch, that 30-to-1 relief tincture, they're on the edge between that hemp and marijuana sign. And then once you start getting to the 3-to-1s, that's 3 part CBD to 1 part THC. Well, now we're actually adding enough THC in there that it's beyond the federal limits for hemp, and now it can only be sold in California. So then once you start getting to that middle of that graph, this is all our California products. And we start ranging from a 1-to-1 product line all the way up to a high concentration of 1-to-3, and finally at a 1-to-30 relief tincture. That's for extreme pain, think an extreme wasting syndrome or some extreme nausea from a chemotherapy, right? That's where you would go with a 1-to-30. And then obviously we also have our Connoisseur high-end solventless extract line, Papa Select, which has both CBD options as well as THC options, and that is all coming from fresh flowers in the Emerald Triangle. So when we talk about, this is our visualization of the expansion of the definition of wellness. So this is what we see. We have everything from topicals to ingestibles to patches to soaks, to inhalables, although we still encourage low temperature vaporization for all of our inhalables. This is the range of products you can work with us, and we continue to add to it. So basically from the left side, it's non-intoxicating. To the right side, you're going to get more intoxicating, and you should start playing somewhere in the middle once you start getting comfortable with cannabis.
So while we're talking about products and the spectrum of products, and you'd mentioned some are available in California, et cetera, we've had a couple of questions about where can people buy your products, and we've had one specific saying, do you ship to Florida? So could you cover generally where your products are available or aren't available?
Sure. You can buy them from many of our retailers. You can go to popandbarkley.com, and it can, depending on where you are, if you're in California, go ahead and go through the age gate, and you can buy our full spectrum products there through licensed dispensaries and delivery services. you can actually order directly online, and it will direct you to the closest delivery service or dispensary that has it. You can pay for your order online, and then you can go and pick it up or get it delivered to you depending on your option. If you are looking for our hemp CBD products outside of California, we ship to all 50 states. We've even been known to ship to the UK, and that you can get done through Papa and Barkley CBD.com, or you can go to papaandbarkley.com and ride the age gate through to the CBD website. So either way, you can order directly from us and pay directly on the website. So you don't have to go through 4 or 5 different gateways. You can go directly to our website and you can click through your way there and get your order done.
Great, thank you. Okay, big question. We've had a lot of questions about dosing. I think we've covered a lot on dosing, but Debbie, if you could talk specifically about pure CBD and hemp, et cetera, and dosing.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, if you have pure CBD, you may need to use up to 10 times as much as cannabis extracted CBD. So all of these amounts that I've listed here are pretty much for, I wouldn't say brand new users, but people without a tolerance. So for example, starting at the bottom, cannabis CBD, if you took 5 milligrams or 1 or 2 puffs, if you were inhaling through a vaporizer, that would be a good starting dose for someone without a tolerance. That's the kind of dose that would work for you every single time. However, if you're going to be doing this 2 or 3 times a day, you might have to increase your dose because you might be developing a little tolerance. So I've seen patients use anywhere from 5 milligrams up to maybe 15 milligrams of cannabis CBD to deal with anxiety. It just depends on how often you do it. And then going to the top of the page, we're just going to multiply that by 5 or 10 times. So if you're having pure isolate CBD, you might want to start with a 25 milligram dose. In order to get an effect, of course, you could start with less, but you might have to go to a 25 milligram dose or more to get an effect. And the reason that I have this middle section is the difference between what's working at a low dose or what's working at a high dose is what the terpene content is. So many hemp extracted CBDs, I know Papa and Barkley has terpenes in their hemp CBD line. They're going to be as active as cannabis, full spectrum cannabis CBD. But some of those companies that have hemp extracted CBD without terpenes, you're going to have to use closer to a pure CBD dose. So with all dosing, you start at a very low starting place. You give it a day or 2 at that low dose, and then you increase from there. So it's always good to find the minimum effective dose.
Thank you. So we've shared a lot already, and we're going to be answering questions shortly. But I know, Debbie, you put together a checklist because we've shared so much and we wanted to distill things down for everyone on the webinar tonight. A quick reference that this is how we should be, or they should be looking at buying products and the consideration. So could you walk us through this checklist that you created?
So the most common questions that we get, that I got with patients, that we get is, okay, what do I do when I go into the dispensary? And rather than depend only or solely on the bud tender's recommendations, that's the person behind the counter, you want to have answers to your own questions before you even go in there. You want to know if you're looking for an inhaled product or something that you want to swallow. Inhaled's going to last short, like 2 to 4 hours. Oral's going to be longer, 6 to 10 hours. You want to know how you feel about THC, what kind of anxiety you have, what's your condition, do you need some stimulation or not? So that'll tell you about your ratio, whether you want 30 to 1, 3 to 1, something like that. If you're going for full flower, then you might want to actually smell it. And if it makes you feel relaxed or uplifted and relaxed, you want to get that strain because your nose will not lie. What you feel from the smell is in a large part, what you'll get when you use it. And then, of course, if you're living in a state where cannabis is not available and you have to use pure isolate or you have to use a hemp-based product, then you don't get to have a whole lot of these choices. You've got to kind of take your 99.7% CBD product. It has to have less than 0.3% THC and use that. The last two really are about personal preference. Do you want to just take a few drops of tincture or a capsule in the morning and be covered for the whole day? Or do you want to use something at will, like a vapor pen, where you can use it as the anxiety comes on? Maybe you have a very short-lived anxiety and you can carry a vapor pen around with you, or you can carry your tincture bottle around with you. So ease of use and where you're going to use it. Do you really want to have to go out and use the restroom and puff on a vapor pen, or do you want to just take something that lasts you all day? And last but not least, usually first, is the cost. And a lot of people really determine what product they're going to get based upon how often they need to use it and how much it costs. I personally have found that tinctures are the most cost-effective way of using cannabis because one drop can really last you a long way, especially with the Papa and Barkley tinctures, which are quite concentrated. So that's pretty much a review of what you want to think about when you walk into the dispensary.
Great, thank you. So with that, a quick conclusion of everything that we've heard tonight. I'll go through that, and then we're going to move now into questions in just a moment. A couple logistic things, and then straight into questions. So CBD and cannabis both help anxiety. Some THC helps stress and depression-induced anxiety. CBD really is great for the worry side of anxiety. We encourage the full spectrum or whole plant. And to use that as much as possible, and the products like Papa and Barkley has that actually take advantage of that and deliver to you in what they do. And take a look at those COAs and really expect some transparency from the manufacturers of the products that you take. And I think Papa and Barkley is one of the exemplary examples of being transparent and being open about what's in the product and what's not in the product, so that you know what you're putting in your body and you know the effect or result that you're going to get. So with that, a couple things, and then we're going to move into questions. You can get the replay of this at threewells.co. You can also see more of Papa and Barkley's products at threewells.co. And here are the URLs for that. We have some upcoming webinars, CBD, cannabis, and your immune system, as well as sleep and insomnia. Those will be coming up in June and July. And remember, do consult your doctor about everything that we've said tonight if when you move forward and use those products. So, and if you want to contact Dr. Debbie, you can, here's the email address for her. And if you want to reach out to Papa and Barkley, you can reach them at help@papaandbarkley.com. And so with that, let's move into questions, because we've got quite a few questions that I want to get to. And we're just slightly behind time, but we're still in good shape. So here's the first question, and this is probably directed more toward you, Debbie, but Boris, jump in if you have more here. So it's a lengthy question, so I'm just going to summarize, and it's from Rob that we received just before the webinar tonight. So Rob takes about 150 milligrams of CBD per day, and sometimes he feels more anxious than he feels like he should. If he takes less CBD for this pain, which causes him anxiety, the pain comes back. So he's got this balance that he's trying to strike between feeling the anxiety from the CBD and trying to stave off pain. Let's see, he says, if I take a lot more, then I get more anxiety, not less. So he's stuck between these two issues. He also says beats taking oxycodone, which he has taken for years, but I guess he doesn't want to do that. So he takes a high 100 milligram soft gel in the morning. It's fairly low in THC, and usually he gets sleepy by noon. And then he takes another 50 milligrams full spectrum soft gel in the afternoon. So what should he do trying to balance between anxiety and his pain? Do you have any recommendations? I know it's complex, but do you have anything that you could get, any guidance you could give him?
In general, CBD is noted for inflammatory pain, and THC is noted to be an analgesic. So I would begin introducing some THC into the mix if he's able to, wherever he lives. Again, keeping it in the 2-to-1 CBD to THC range, because he'll get a lot more mileage in treating his pain and also not get as sleepy in the afternoons if he brings some THC into the mix. So that'd be my first suggestion. I don't know where he lives, so that might not be possible, but hopefully he can do that.
Okay, thank you. Another question in relation to anxiety. Rashid has panic attacks, and he's wondering, where this falls in that anxiety, and what would you recommend for panic attacks? What to take?
So I consider panic attacks to be a really good example of worry-induced anxiety, and it comes on really quick, and you need something really quick lots of times, and that's where you're going to go for your tincture as a mouth spray. You can put it into an atomizer bottle and just spray it in your mouth, or your vaporized products where you inhale, because that's going to come on fast enough to really, address the panic. Tinctures take 15 to 30 minutes to have an effect. Capsules take an hour. If you're in the middle of a panic attack, you want something to come on really quick. So the mouth spray versions come on in about 5 minutes, and so does inhalation. So I would stick with those CBD-rich products.
Boris, we had a question about CBD THC products and showing up on drug tests. Do you know if which or both would show up on a drug test?
THC products most definitely would. Topical products would not. If you're just using it every once in a while. If you're using it like, Adam's father was, for example, the THC bomb, he was using 5 times a day. That could potentially show up at a drug test over time if you're using it for months over time. That being said, our full spectrum tinctures, our CBD tinctures, all of them could potentially show up on a drug test because we do not filter that THC out. If you're within a broad spectrum, which has filtered out that THC, or with an isolate product, both of those you should be able to ingest like a tincture or a capsule without fear of failing a drug test. But any ratio products and any full spectrum products that you are ingesting into your body, into your mouth, you will most likely be at risk for failing a drug test.
And Boris, staying with the whole products and consuming, we have a question from T wondering that are capsules less effective than tinctures?
No, I actually think capsules for me are more effective. If you need high doses of CBD, like myself, our capsules are 30 milligrams a piece. I take about 120 milligrams a day to control my inflammation for my psoriatic arthritis. That would be 4 full dropperfuls of tincture, which is just a lot of tincture. I prefer our 30 milligram cap. I take 4 of those with 1 glass of water and it's over, right? Plus, when you're getting it into your stomach, you're actually getting it more systemic. I think with CBD in general, it's better to swallow it because it's not changing forms inside of your stomach. Delta-9 THC actually becomes something much more psychoactive when you swallow it. That's why edibles can hit you harder than smoking it, for example. But it depends how you take the tincture. If you take the tincture sublingually, wait the proper 20 to 30 seconds for it to fully absorb, then that I think has a less lasting effect than if you actually swallow a CBD tincture. So anything with ratios of 20 to 30 to 1 CBD, so ones that are non-intoxicating, I find it's better to take the capsules or to actually ingest into your stomach, especially if you have full body pain.
I have a 2-part question for you, and this will be our last question. We are at time this evening, but the question, the part 1 is it true if a product is THC dominant, if it's applied topically, there isn't a psychoactive effect. And the part two to that is a CBD/THC topical, is that safe for a pregnant woman to use?
So for pregnant women, guys, I give the cookie cutter answer no matter what. You have to check with your physician to see how they feel. Our our topical products are not transdermal. So, at the end of the day, it's your risk and it's your pregnancy, and I wouldn't mess with anything, there. I know people that have, and they're, and that's a different conversation that I'm happy to have like individually. But in general, I do not recommend any of our products for pregnant people or pregnant women at all.
And if the product is THC dominant and it's applied topically, is there a psychoactive effect?
Most of the time, no, but in a few percentage points of instances, we've had people report some kind of sensitivity or loopiness from a topical product. It's literally happened in like 1% of cases. I attribute it to extreme THC sensitivity. Some people do have that. There's a syndrome that if you take cannabis, you will start suffering from cyclical vomiting, which definitely sucks. So I don't think that anybody that is sensitive to THC topically will necessarily have cyclical vomiting. But what I'm saying is that there is a subset of the population that is very sensitive to THC. So if you know that that's you, then I would not, stick away from topical THC. But other than that, for the 99% of people that do not have that issue, topical THC will not get you high and will only take away your pain.
Well, Boris, thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge with us tonight and sharing, even more in depth on the Papa and Barkley products and what goes into them and why people should be comfortable taking them. And Dr. Debbie, as always, thank you very much for sharing all that wisdom that you've picked up over the years and helping us guide on dosage and types of THC, CBD, et cetera, to take. So again, thank you both for a great webinar, and everyone that attended tonight. Wish you great happiness and joy, and go have fun for the rest of the evening. And again, thank you for joining us. And you can find this webinar replay on threewells.co or on our YouTube channel. So again, thanks everyone. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you later. Good night.